Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I've decided to talk about video game history. And more specifically, why, in my opinion, the original Xbox is in fact the first modern console. A bold claim perhaps, but allow me to elaborate. When the Xbox was first released on November 15th of 2001, the video game industry was a very different place in comparison to what it is now. For a start, platformers were still considered the mainstay of console gaming. For a few examples of what I'm talking about, just look at Banjo-Tooie, released in 2000, Conker's Bad Fur Day, released in 2001, the very first Jak and Daxter, released also in 2001, and Ratchet & Clank, released in 2002. Now, of course, this isn't to say that these were the only types of games that were made on consoles. However, if you wanted to point to the primary genre celebrated on those systems at the time, it would have had to have been platformers. By contrast, the Xbox, when it first came out, had a very different background, being created by Microsoft and thus its only lineage in gaming being the PC gaming market, which by that time had been dominated by first-person shooters, CRPGs, RTSs, and various types of simulator. Thus, the Xbox ended up having a substantially different library of games in comparison to the PlayStation 2 and GameCube that it actively competed against, with the most notable franchise, of course, being Halo, developed by first-person shooter and RTS veteran studio Bungie. But of course it was not the only notable franchise. You could also look to the MechAssault spin-off series of the MechWarrior franchise, the Unreal Championship spin-off series to the Unreal Tournament franchise, the Crimson Skies High Road to Revenge sequel to the original Crimson Skies, as well as the Xbox receiving console-exclusive ports of PC classics such as the original Operation Flashpoint and Counter-Strike. All of this is to say that the Xbox was the first console to truly start the trend of both first and third-person shooters overtaking platformers in terms of popularity on console. And while this change appears to have been largely by accident, and something that to some degrees Microsoft even tried to actively stop by releasing its own platformers, such as Blinx the Timesweeper and Voodoo Vince, to avoid gaining the reputation of being the least family-friendly console of the entire generation, it was nevertheless an important change to the industry. But this does, however, allow me to move on to changes that by contrast were 100% intentional. Namely, the fact that the Xbox was the first console to change its focus from single-player campaigns to primarily online multiplayer. Of course, this isn't to say that online multiplayer hadn't existed in console gaming before, but it is safe to say that the Xbox truly was the first console to make it a primary focus, thanks both to its online service known as Xbox Live, as well as the sizable number of games that utilized this particular service. And with Xbox Live, there came a third major change, that being the introduction and popularization of DLC, which enabled Xbox players to gain access to additional content that was made after the game's release that wouldn't be available to other console players, and in some cases even PC players, which was enough on its own to even give the Xbox the arguably definitive version of multiple multi-platform games. Needless to say, all of these changes had a very profound impact, as could be easily demonstrated by just how different the library of the PlayStation 3 was in comparison to the library of the PlayStation 2. And what is perhaps most impressive of all is the fact that the Xbox was able to make these changes to the industry in the time period of just between 2001 to 2005. In just 4 years, the Xbox would establish itself as a landmark console, and as, in my opinion, the first modern console that forever changed the industry as we know it. A statement that I hope to have adequately backed with the facts that I have presented here. And with this in mind, I hope you'll agree when I say that the date of November 15th, 2001 deserves to be remembered as one of the most important days in all of video game history. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.